All right, let's dive into the extended essay. You know, that huge part of the IB diploma that's kind of a mix of genuine excitement and, let's be honest, a little bit of terror. But don't worry, whether you're staring at a blank page or maybe you're already drowning in research, we're going to break it all down and guide you on this big academic quest. Okay, let's just get it out of the way. The number that's probably looming in your mind, 4,000. Yep, that's the word count. And look, it sounds like a lot because, well, it is. This is not just another school paper. We're talking about a true academic marathon. And a number like that can feel pretty intimidating, right? But I want you to try and reframe it with me. What if this isn't just some huge hurdle you have to clear? What if it's actually the biggest academic adventure you've been on so far? I mean, this is your chance to become a real expert in something that you find genuinely fascinating. So what is it officially? The IB calls it an independent, self-directed piece of research that ends in a 4,000-word paper. Now, the keywords to really latch onto there are independent, self-directed, and topic of your choice. This is your project from start to finish, driven entirely by your curiosity. So here's our game plan. First, we're going to dig into the why, like what's the real point of the essay? Then we'll look at the two different paths you can take. After that, we'll get into the nuts and bolts of the actual research and writing. Then we'll cover the power of reflection. And finally, wrap up with what you really get out of all this hard work. Okay, first up, your academic quest. Because before we get into the how, it is so important to understand the why. What is the actual purpose of this massive undertaking? You know, the IB has 4 main goals for the extended essay. It's really about feeling that thrill of real intellectual discovery, not just memorizing facts. It's about you taking the lead on the research. And this shows that the whole process, developing your skills and thinking about your own growth, is just as important as that final paper you turn in. And that brings us to your first huge decision, choosing your path. Are you going to dive super deep into one subject you love, or are you going to build a bridge and connect 2 of them? So, on one hand, you've got the subject-focused path. This is your classic deep dive, an investigation that stays right within the boundaries of one of your DP subjects. But on the other hand, you have the interdisciplinary path, and this is where you get to connect the dots, mixing ideas and methods from 2 different subjects to tackle a really complex question. Now, this is where it gets really cool. Just look at the creative potential here. These are actual examples from the IB guide. Applying chaos theory from physics to the Cuban Missile Crisis in history? Amazing. Or using psychology to understand how abstract art is created. The interdisciplinary path lets you do some truly groundbreaking and exciting stuff. Okay, so you've picked a path. Now for the journey itself. How in the world do you get from that first little spark of an idea to a polished 4,000-word essay? Well, it's a process, and thankfully, there are some pretty clear stages. It all starts with choosing a topic you're actually passionate about. From there, you have to narrow it down to a super sharp, focused research question. That question then becomes your North Star, guiding all your research. Then comes the really hard part, analyzing everything you found to build your own argument, before finally structuring it all and writing the essay itself. I just love this quote. Research is formalized curiosity. That is exactly what the extended essay is all about. It's not just about passively finding information. It's about actively investigating, questioning, and exploring with a clear purpose. It's your own curiosity, just given a structure and a mission. All right, let's talk about something that is absolutely essential to this whole process. And, this is important, it's part of your final grade. We're talking about reflection. This is not an afterthought, it is a core requirement of the EE. 3, that's the magic number. That's how many mandatory reflection sessions you will have with your supervisor. These are formal, documented, and assessed check-ins. They are a fundamental piece of the puzzle. So what actually happens in these sessions? Well, they're basically structured conversations about your progress, the challenges you're hitting, and how you're growing as a researcher. It's your chance to talk through problems and actually put into words what you're learning about the process itself. And that final session, it's a special concluding interview called the Vivo Voce, a chance to discuss your finished work and reflect on the whole epic journey. So you've done the work, you've written the words, you've finished the reflections. What was it all for? Let's talk about the ultimate reward, which I promise you goes way beyond whatever grade you get. I mean, think about it. The extended essay is this powerful engine for developing those IB learner profile traits. You become a true inquirer by following your own curiosity down the rabbit hole. You become a much sharper thinker by analyzing sources and building a solid argument. And you for sure become a better communicator by having to structure and present a complex academic paper. And here is probably the most important takeaway of all. The skills you're building here, things like self-management, critical thinking, deep research, these are exactly what universities and future employers are desperate for. You're not just writing an essay, you're literally building a bridge to your own future. And that pretty much brings us to the end. But for you, it's just the beginning of your academic quest. Remember, this entire massive process, it all starts with just a single spark of interest. So I'll leave you with this one question to mull over. What are you truly curious about? Because that's where your adventure begins.